My name is Lorraine Carter, and let me tell y'all something straight. The people you eat with, the people you laugh with, the people you break bread with, sometimes they the same ones plotting to bury you 6 feet under. That's not some movie line. That's my life. So before I even go deep, let me know where you watching from tonight. Drop it in the comments because I want to see just how far this story reaches. How many of y'all been through betrayal in your own bloodline? See, I'm not here to sugarcoat nothing. I'm not here to paint no pretty picture of family values, or this fairy tale Thanksgiving where everybody hold hands and say grace. I'm here to tell you how I walked into my son Patrick's garage, heard my own husband Franklin's voice asking why I was still alive, and realized at that very moment that my whole family, the same family I built my life around, had turned into wolves waiting for me to drop dead. Thanksgiving Day, Illinois. Most people imagine a table full of turkey, collard greens, sweet potatoes, kids running around, music playing soft in the background. That's what I thought too, walking into Patrick's home that morning. I carried my pie, I carried my love, and I carried the hope that no matter how much tension had been brewing in my marriage, at least this day could bring us together. I was wrong. So wrong. The air already felt thick when I stepped through the door. Patrick hugged me, but it wasn't the kind of hug a son gives his mama. It was quick, cold, like he just wanted to check me off his list. Janelle smiled that wide, fake smile, the kind that don't touch the eyes. And Franklin, my husband of decades. He sat at the table like he owned the world, head high, eyes sharp, already in control. I didn't even know then that he was the one pulling all the strings. We ate, we laughed a little, we talked about old memories, but I felt it. I felt something under the surface. Y'all ever been in a room where folks talking to you but their spirit is against you? Where the words sound warm but the air feels cold? That's what I was sitting in. They had their plan laid out, neat and pretty, right there in front of me. And I was too blind to see it. Janelle poured me a drink. Now I didn't think twice. Why would I? That's my daughter-in-law. She married my son, carried his child. In my mind, she was supposed to be family, supposed to be a woman I could trust. But what I held in my hand wasn't a simple glass. It was death, dressed up like hospitality. I took a sip, smiled, thanked her. Hours rolled by, and I was still standing. What I didn't know then was that they were watching me like hawks, waiting for me to drop. I didn't know Franklin was sitting there timing every move, waiting for his old dream to finally be fulfilled, the dream of me out the picture so he could get his hands on everything I worked for. But let me tell you something. What's done in the dark always got a way of coming into the light. And when it does, it don't ask for your permission. Just bursts out raw and ugly. That day, my Thanksgiving turned into a graveyard. And that house, the one I thought was filled with family and love, became the stage for the biggest betrayal of my life. So sit tight because I'm about to walk you through every piece of this. Every word, every action, every dirty secret that came crawling out. You think your family got issues? Wait till you hear what mine did. Let me take y'all back. Because the cracks in my marriage didn't just appear overnight. They've been spreading for years, like termites in the walls you can't see. Till the whole house is about to cave in. See, Franklin Carter wasn't always the monster I came to know. When we first built our life together, we did it with hard work. We hustled, but we hustled clean. I ran my businesses fair, he stood beside me. And we put food on our table without owing nobody nothing. That's how I was raised. You keep your hands clean even if your back got a break to get it done. But Franklin got greedy with age. Most men slow down when they hit their 50s and 60s. Not him. He started chasing money harder than he did when we were young, like he could feel time running out on him. He wanted more, always more. He used to sit at the kitchen table with his little notebooks, writing down numbers and plans like he was about to reinvent Wall Street. And then one evening, he laid it on me, the scheme that started the war in my house. He leaned in close, lowered his voice like he was letting me in on a secret, and said, "Lorraine, this is the move that'll set us up forever. No more scraping, no more depending on them slow businesses. We're talking real money. Fast money." My stomach dropped the moment he said it because I knew what he was talking about. Drugs. Dirty business. Poisoning folks in the streets while we sat in comfort. I shut it down quick. I told him straight, "Franklin, I'm not tying my life's work to no drug game. We already built enough. We already living good. I'm not letting you throw dirt on our name just 'cause you greedy." He didn't take that well. His face hardened like stone. He looked at me like I wasn't his wife, like I was some stranger standing in his way. From that night, I swear, the love died in his eyes. He stopped holding me close, stopped laughing with me, stopped seeing me as his partner. I became his obstacle. Now, don't get it twisted. I wasn't scared of no argument. I'd been through storms with that man before. But this time was different. Franklin wasn't just angry, he was calculating. You know how you can feel when somebody starts shifting on you. They still smile, they still say the right words, but underneath, something ugly is brewing. That was him. He never forgave me for saying no. He started spending less time at home, more time working on deals. But I noticed the change. The way he whispered on the phone, the way he'd lower his voice when I walked in. He didn't try to love me anymore. He tried to outsmart me. He started talking slick to Patrick, planting seeds in his ear, making it sound like I was holding the family back. Franklin was grooming his own son to see me as the enemy. Looking back, that was the beginning of the betrayal. Not the drink at Thanksgiving. Not the words in the garage. It started right there at that kitchen table, when Franklin chose greed over loyalty, money over marriage, and power over family. That's when he stopped being my husband and started being my rival. I didn't know it then, but he was already mapping out the day I'd be gone. Already making me the problem that needed to be solved. And when a man decides you're standing in the way of his last shot at glory, you better believe he'll tear down the whole house just to remove you from it. So when I tell y'all Thanksgiving was just the explosion, understand this. The fire had been lit years before. And Franklin Carter was the one holding the match. If you want to destroy a woman, you don't always come at her head on. Some men are too slick for that. They'll go after her heart. And for me, my heart was my son, Patrick. Franklin knew it. He knew if he could pull Patrick away from me, he could break me in ways no knife, no bullet, no poison ever could. And that's exactly what he did. Slow, quiet, steady, like a snake wrapping itself around its prey. Patrick was my first pride, my first joy. I carried him through nights when we barely had light in the house. I made sure he never went hungry, never walked out the door without shoes on his feet. I built those businesses not just for me, but so he'd have a life better than mine. He was supposed to be my right hand, my blood who had my back no matter what. But Franklin started planting little whispers, and before long, those whispers grew into walls between me and my son. Started subtle. Franklin would tell Patrick, "You know your mama only care about her image. Everything gotta be her way. She don't listen to nobody but herself." Then it got deeper. "You a grown man now. You need to think about your future, not just what she say. She'll keep you small just so she can feel big." First, Patrick brushed it off. But Franklin didn't stop. Day by day, year by year, he chipped away at him. I'd see it in Patrick's eyes. That warmth he used to have when he looked at me, it started fading. He'd sigh when I spoke, cut me off mid-sentence, roll his eyes like I was nagging. I thought maybe it was just him getting older, stepping into manhood. But no. That was Franklin's work. He was reshaping my own son's mind against me. And Janelle, his wife, she played her part too. I could tell she was soaking up Franklin's words like a sponge. If Franklin said I was selfish, she nodded. If Franklin said I was old-fashioned, she laughed. Soon Patrick had two voices in his ear, both echoing the same lie. That I was the problem. That I was the reason they couldn't get ahead. It broke something inside me to watch it. I'd call Patrick and he wouldn't pick up. I'd ask him to stop by, and he'd have an excuse ready before I finished my sentence. And when he did show his face, he treated me like some outsider, like a guest he didn't want to see for long. You know how it feels when your own child looks at you like you're a burden. That's a pain I wouldn't wish on nobody. But here's the thing, I didn't know just how deep it went. I thought maybe Patrick was just distant. I didn't know he was siding with Franklin in private conversations, sitting at the table with his father and wife, nodding along as they talked about how to push me out the picture. I didn't know my own son was helping them plan a future without me in it. And that's what betrayal really is. It don't hit hardest when it comes from strangers. It hits when it's the same child you carried, the same child you protected, the same child you prayed for at night. Betrayal don't always scream in your face. Sometimes it just walks away from you slowly, until you realize one day the bond you thought was unbreakable is gone. By the time Thanksgiving came around, Patrick wasn't my boy no more. He was Franklin's soldier. His loyalty had shifted. His heart hardened against me. And Franklin. He sat back watching it unfold, proud of the wedge he'd driven between us. That's the truth nobody wants to admit. Sometimes the man you married don't just betray you as a husband. He'll turn into a poison that seeps into your children too. And by the time you notice, it's already too late to pull them back. Now let me talk about Janelle, my daughter-in-law. The woman I thought was supposed to be like a second daughter to me, turned out to be the sharpest knife pressed against my back. See, when Patrick brought her home, I welcomed her with open arms. I cooked for her, helped her settle in, gave her the kind of love I never had from my own mother-in-law. I wanted her to feel like she belonged. But somewhere along the line, Janelle made a choice. She chose Franklin over me. And I don't mean she chose him as a father figure. No, she chose his side. Every slick word he dropped, she caught it. Every complaint he had about me, she repeated it. She started echoing Franklin like she was his shadow. If Franklin said I was stubborn, Janelle said it louder. If Franklin said I was standing in the way, Janelle nodded and smiled like she'd been waiting to agree. She didn't want peace in that house. She wanted a piece of the pie. That's what made her dangerous. See, Franklin was bold, but he was aging. He needed someone younger, someone close, someone who could act without raising suspicion. And that's where Janelle came in. She wasn't just Patrick's wife. She was Franklin's perfect partner in betrayal. She moved with precision, quiet and clean. And when the plan came down to slipping poison into a glass, she did it like she was pouring love. Thanksgiving Day, she moved around the kitchen like nothing was wrong. She smiled, she served, she laughed. But her eyes told the truth if you looked hard enough. She wasn't looking at me like family. She was looking at me like a target. Every time she placed a plate on the table, every time she topped off a glass, she was calculating. I remember the moment clear as day. Janelle handed me a drink, looked me dead in the face and said, "Here, you need this after all that cooking." And I thanked her like a fool. I lifted that glass, not knowing it was laced with death. That's how betrayal works. It don't come with a warning label. Comes with a smile. Now don't get me wrong. I'd been peeping Janelle for a while. She wasn't subtle about where her loyalty lay. If Franklin spoke, she listened closer than Patrick ever did. If Franklin complained, she comforted him like she was his right hand. And Patrick, my son, He couldn't even see it. Or maybe he didn't want to see it. He was too busy siding with Franklin to realize his own wife was knee-deep in the same dirt. The truth is, Janelle never cared about family. She cared about security, about getting her slice of whatever Franklin promised. And Franklin promised plenty. He made her feel important, like she was more than just somebody's wife. He fed her greed, stroked her ego, and before long she was running with his plan like it was her own. That's what made her the perfect one to carry out the poisoning. Patrick couldn't have done it. He would have slipped up. Franklin couldn't risk it. Too obvious. But Janelle. She was the safe hand, the smiling face, the trusted hostess. She was the one nobody would question. And that's why the job fell on her shoulders. Looking back, it chills me. To know that the same young woman I sat down with, laughed with, prayed for, could so easily hand me a glass of poison and call it kindness. To know that she walked around that house Thanksgiving Day pretending like everything was normal, when in reality, she was waiting for me to drop cold on the floor. That's the cruelest part of betrayal. It don't always come from your enemies. Sometimes it walks into your family through marriage. Sometimes it wears the face of the woman you welcomed in with open arms. And sometimes it's not loyalty they bring into your house. It's greed, plain and simple. And Janelle. She wasn't loyal to Patrick. She wasn't loyal to me. She was loyal to greed. And greed will make a woman poison her own mother-in-law with a smile. Thanksgiving Day. Folks think it's about family, food, and giving thanks. But that year in Illinois it was about death. The stage was set like a holiday dinner. But truth be told, it was an execution dressed in Sunday clothes. Everybody else in the family thought we were gathering for love. Me. I didn't know yet that the table I sat at had already been turned into my coffin. The house smelled like collard greens, cornbread, turkey, all the things that usually warm your soul on a cold November afternoon. The TV was playing football in the background, and I tried my best to believe this was normal. I wanted to believe my family was whole, even though deep down I could feel the tension crawling across the room. Franklin was too quiet, too measured. Patrick kept checking me like he was waiting for something. And Janelle, she was all smiles, like she had everything under control. I sat down, said grace, and bowed my head. When I lifted it back up, the glass was already in front of me. Janelle's hand, delicate and steady, had placed it right there, like she was offering me care. "Here you go, Mama Lorraine," she said, soft and sweet. And I picked it up without a second thought. That was the poison. That was the moment they thought would seal my fate. I took a sip, smiled, and kept eating. Hours started to roll. The food was passed around, conversations came and went, but behind every glance was suspicion. Franklin's eyes kept darting toward me, checking. Patrick kept staring when he thought I wasn't looking. His jaw tight like he was waiting for me to slump over. And Janelle, she played her part best. She kept talking, kept laughing, but every so often her gaze lingered on me just a little too long, like she was watching a clock only she could hear. But nothing happened. I didn't fall. I didn't choke. I didn't clutch my stomach or collapse on the floor like they expected. I stayed seated, eating my plate, talking, smiling. And that's when the unease started to spread across their faces. You could see it, the nervous shifting in their seats, the way Franklin's fingers tapped against the table, the way Patrick rubbed his neck, restless. They thought by then I should have been gone. I didn't know the drink was poisoned at the time. All I knew was that something felt off. The way they kept watching me didn't feel like love, it felt like a countdown. And you don't forget that type of silence, the heavy silence that follows laughter, when folks are waiting for something to happen and it don't. As the hours stretched, I started to sense it stronger. The way Franklin avoided my eye. The way Janelle busied herself in the kitchen just a little too much, coming back with forced smiles. The way Patrick's mood soured, short-tempered with the kids, snapping at little things. That house didn't feel like Thanksgiving anymore. Felt like a waiting room. I got up a couple times, walked around, checked on the grandkids upstairs. Still, their eyes followed me like hawks circling prey. They didn't know what went wrong, why their plan wasn't working. The longer I stayed upright, the more their nerves rattled. By the time evening came, the air was so tight you could cut it with a knife. And that's the part that still haunts me. I sat at that table, surrounded by people I loved, people I sacrificed for, people who carried my blood and my name. And while I laughed, while I ate, while I hugged my grandbaby, they were silently praying for me to die. Thanksgiving is supposed to be about gratitude. But for Franklin, Patrick, and Janelle, it was about greed. And as those hours dragged on, the cracks in their calm started showing. Their patience wore thin. And the truth, the ugly, bloody truth, was getting ready to spill out in ways none of us could have predicted. That day wasn't a holiday. It was a trap. And little did I know, it was about to backfire in the worst way possible. Sometimes you can feel the walls of a house closing in on you. That's what it felt like after hours of sitting at that Thanksgiving table. Eyes on me, whispers passing like shadows. My chest felt tight, my head clouded. I told myself I just needed some air. So I stepped outside, walked slow toward the garage, trying to clear my mind. I didn't know I was about to walk straight into the truth that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. The garage was half lit, the kind of dim space where voices carry but faces hide. I stopped just outside, leaned against the wall for a second, and that's when I heard it. Franklin's voice. Dark, low, angry. Those words cut through me like glass. How come she's still alive? My breath caught in my throat. He wasn't asking a question out of concern. He wasn't worried about me, wasn't wondering why his wife hadn't fainted. He was furious. Furious that I hadn't died yet. But it didn't stop there. I expected maybe he was on the phone talking to someone else, but then I heard Patrick. My son. My blood. His voice was shaky, nervous. I don't know, maybe the dose wasn't enough. And then Janelle chimed in, hushed but clear as day. I did what you told me. I put it in her drink. My knees went weak. I grabbed the wall to steady myself because in that moment the mask dropped. All the fake smiles, all the family chatter, all the forced warmth, it wasn't real. They had been plotting together. Not just Franklin, not just Janelle. My son Patrick too. The three of them standing right there in that garage, whispering about why I was still alive like they were disappointed their plan had failed. It's one thing to suspect. It's another thing to hear it with your own ears. To know for certain that the people closest to you, the ones you carried, the ones you married, the ones you raised, have turned against you. I stood frozen, the night air biting my skin, my stomach turning as their words dug deeper and deeper. Franklin's voice came again, harsher this time. This ain't supposed to go like this. She should have been gone by now. We can't afford mistakes. I felt my chest tighten, my heartbeat pounding so loud I was scared they'd hear me. They were plotting my death, and they weren't even ashamed. Patrick's voice broke me. He wasn't confused. He wasn't resisting. He was cooperating. My own son was in there, talking about how the plan hadn't worked, like my life was just some inconvenience standing in his way. That bond one thought could never be broken. It had already been crushed long before I realized. And Janelle. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't regretful. She sounded annoyed. Annoyed that her poison hadn't finished me off. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just Franklin's plan. She was invested in it too, riding it like her golden ticket. I wanted to scream, wanted to storm in there and call them out. But something told me to stay quiet. Because now I knew the truth. And sometimes silence is the most powerful weapon you can hold. I pulled back, careful not to make a sound, and walked away with those words echoing in my head. How come she's still alive? That night, the air outside was cold, but the coldest thing was realizing the people I trusted most wanted me in the ground. The mask had dropped, and all I saw was greed staring back at me through the voices of my own husband, my son, and the woman who married into my family. I thought Thanksgiving was already tense. But what I had just overheard, that was the confirmation. The plan was real. The betrayal was real. And the danger I was in wasn't just in my head. It was standing right there in my own bloodline, whispering in a garage about how to finish me off. I was still standing there, my mind spinning from what I had just heard in that garage. Franklin, Patrick, and Janelle whispering about why I was still breathing, when the sound hit me. Crash. A thud from upstairs. Then silence, too heavy to ignore. My body stiffened. Something in me knew before I even moved. I knew it wasn't just an accident. I turned back toward the house, heart pounding, feet moving before my brain could catch up. By the time I stepped into the kitchen, Franklin and Patrick were already on edge, their heads snapping up at the sound. Janelle froze, her smile dropping, her eyes wide. We all knew something had happened. We just didn't know yet how deep the damage ran. I climbed those stairs fast, my chest heaving, the noise echoing again. A soft groan, a child's whimper. And when I turned the corner into the room, my soul broke. Little Jania, my granddaughter, my baby girl, was lying curled on the floor, her small hands clutched tight to her stomach, her face twisted in pain, her body jerking in ways no child's body should ever jerk. The glass I'd been given, the one meant to end me, was tipped over near her, liquid spilled across the rug. I froze, every bone in my body screaming, my heart trying to leap out of my chest. My knees wanted to buckle, but something held me upright. I rushed to her, calling her name, trying to lift her little head, but I could feel it. Her body was shutting down. She had drunk the poison. My baby, innocent as sunrise, had taken the glass I thought was just kindness from Janelle, and now she was paying the price. By the time Franklin, Patrick, and Janelle came rushing in, it was already too late. Jania's body stilled in my arms. The life that lit her eyes, the laughter that used to fill that house. Gone in seconds. Gone because of greed. Gone because the glass they laced for me ended up in the hands of the purest soul in that home. The room erupted in chaos, but I didn't miss the truth hiding in their faces. Patrick's screams weren't just grief. They were guilt, raw and unshakable. Janelle's tears weren't just sorrow. They were fear, the kind that comes when your plan backfires and leaves a trail too ugly to hide. And Franklin. He stood stiff, his jaw locked, his eyes hard. He didn't even shed a tear. His face looked more like fury than pain. Fury that the wrong person had died. That was the moment my world split open. Because grief wasn't the only thing that hit me, it was clarity. Everything they'd planned for me had come back on them. And now the blood of an innocent child was on their hands. Not mine. I sat there holding Jania's small frame, rocking her like I used to when she was a baby, my tears soaking her hair. But inside, a fire started to burn. They thought they could take me out, erase me, claim everything I had built. Instead, their evil had stolen the one person who deserved nothing but joy and a future. My granddaughter's death wasn't an accident. It was the consequence of their own greed. And let me tell you something. When betrayal costs you your child's child, when it robs you of innocence you can never get back, you don't forgive and you don't forget. You rise. You rise out of grief with vengeance sharper than any knife. And you make sure every person who played a part in it pays for what they did. That night, as I laid Jania down for the last time, my heart broke in ways it'll never heal. But my resolve hardened. They wanted me gone. Instead, they lost everything that mattered most. The plan backfired, and from that day forward, the war between me and Franklin, Patrick, and Janelle had officially begun. Grief got two faces. One face screams, claws at the air, throws itself on the ground like the world just ended. The other face, quiet, cold, heavy. That was me the night Jania died. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't fall apart. My body wanted to, but my spirit said no. Because I knew right then, if I gave Franklin, Patrick, and Janelle the show they were expecting, I'd be playing right into their hands. They wanted me broken. They wanted me weak. They wanted me to fall. Instead, I sat silent, and in that silence I was plotting. I watched them. That living room was thick with fake tears and crocodile cries. Patrick was pacing, hitting his hands against his head like he was losing his mind. Janelle was sobbing, but every so often she'd glance at Franklin, like she needed him to tell her how to act next. And Franklin, he didn't fool me one bit. His eyes were hard, dry, almost angry. He wasn't mourning Jania. He was fuming that the wrong person had drunk that glass. I sat on the couch holding my granddaughter's blanket, rocking it in my arms like her body was still inside. And while they were pretending, I was remembering every word I'd overheard in that garage. How come she's still alive? That was Franklin's voice. That was the truth. And now that Jania was gone, I knew something they didn't know. I knew the whole game. In my silence, I made a vow. I told myself, Lorraine, you ain't gonna let this go. You ain't gonna be their fool no more. They took your baby girl's life, whether they meant to or not, and now they gotta pay. Not with fists, not with yelling, but with everything they hold dear. See, Franklin thought he was slick. He thought he was the only mastermind in that house. But what he didn't know was that silence is power. Silence gives you time to think, time to plan, time to strike when the enemy least expects it. And while they sat crying fake tears that night, I was already rewriting the story in my head. I would not confront them, not yet. Confrontation would have given them the chance to cover their tracks, twist the truth, make me look crazy. Well, I'd let them think I was drowning in grief. I'd let them believe I was too broken to see straight. That way, when I came back for everything, they wouldn't see it coming. And that's the thing about revenge. It don't always start with fire. Sometimes it starts with stillness, with watching, with letting your enemies believe they've won. That night, while they cried their fake cries, I promised myself I was taking back every single thing I ever gave them. The roof over their heads, the businesses they touched, the money they counted. Piece by piece, I was going to strip them bare. I looked at Patrick that night, my own son. My heart ached seeing him broken, but not just with grief. It was guilt on his face too, guilt he couldn't scrub off. He had listened to Franklin's lies, followed Janelle's lead, and now his own daughter was gone. He didn't even know I knew, but I knew. And my silence was the rope tightening around all three of their necks. Janelle kept wailing, but I could see it in her eyes, fear. She was scared the poison would trace back to her. Scared I'd ask questions she couldn't answer. She didn't know I wasn't going to ask. Not one word. I wasn't going to give her the chance to explain away what she did. My revenge wasn't going to come in questions. It was going to come in actions. Franklin sat in his chair, cold as ice. He barely looked at me. I knew what was on his mind. How to clean this up, how to make sure his plan didn't fall apart. But it already had. He just didn't know it yet. That night, as I laid down in the guest room with Jania's blanket pressed to my chest, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I didn't pray. Plan. My silence was my shield, and my vow was my weapon. They thought Thanksgiving was the day they killed me. But truth be told, Thanksgiving was the day I came alive again. And from that night forward, Lorraine Carter wasn't their victim. I was their reckoning. When you've been betrayed that deep, when your own blood and the man you built your life with sit around plotting your death, you don't just get even. You take back what's yours. Piece by piece. Quiet. Legal. Solid. That's how I moved after Jania's death. See, Franklin, Patrick, and Janelle thought they had me cornered. They thought my grief would blind me, weaken me, keep me from seeing the trap they set. But grief didn't break me, it sharpened me. While they walked around the house with their fake tears, I was already thinking about the deeds, the titles, the accounts. Everything they had been eating off of came from me. And just like I gave it, I could take it back. The first thing I went after was the house they were living in. That place wasn't theirs, it was mine. Years back, out of love, I had signed over partial control, thinking Patrick should have a stake in his future. I trusted Franklin to manage what was left in my name. But trust was dead now. I called my lawyer, I pulled every document, every paper trail. And where my name had been erased, I put it right back. Within weeks, the house was legally mine again. They could keep their furniture, their dishes, their fake family portraits, but the roof over their heads, that belonged to me. Next were the businesses. Franklin never built anything. I did. And Patrick had only ever stepped into positions I made room for. I looked through the paperwork and realized just how much I had given, how much of my sweat I had handed over to ungrateful hands. So I flipped it. Contracts were pulled. Counts were closed. I took back every piece of paper that had my signature, every check that passed through my name. I shut doors they thought would always be open. And I didn't announce it. I didn't give no warnings. That's the thing about real power, you don't gotta scream it. You just move. By the time they realized what I was doing, the ground was already gone beneath their feet. They went to pay bills, and accounts were frozen. They went to check profits, and the streams were dry. Everything they touched had my name on it again. I'll never forget the look on Patrick's face when he realized the house note wasn't coming out of his account anymore. He came to me, trying to ask questions with that broken voice of his, like he didn't know how all of it changed so fast. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. 'Cause what could I say? This was the same boy who sat in a garage with his daddy, talking about how I should have been gone. Janelle tried to act like it didn't bother her, but I saw her pacing at night, whispering on the phone, desperate for answers. Her security blanket had been snatched, and she couldn't hide the panic. She married into the Carter name thinking it would keep her comfortable forever. She didn't know I was the foundation that name stood on. And when I pulled my weight back, she had nothing. And Franklin, old arrogant Franklin, he was the angriest of them all. He thought his plan would leave me buried and him rich. Instead, it left him exposed. He stomped around the house, cursing, throwing things, blaming Patrick and Janelle for mistakes. But the truth was, it wasn't their mistakes that cost him. It was his greed. Piece by piece I stripped them. And I didn't just leave them with nothing. I left them with a taste of what life felt like when you bite the hand that fed you. Every roof they slept under, every dollar they counted, every meal they ate, it all came from me. And now it was gone. That was the beginning of their downfall. They tried to bury me, but they forgot one thing. You can't bury the woman who built the ground you're standing on. I thought I had seen the worst already. I thought the betrayal couldn't cut no deeper than sitting at Thanksgiving with poison in my cup, or holding my granddaughter's body while the 3 people responsible cried fake tears. But then I dug deeper. And what I found? That was the insult that ripped the last thread of forgiveness out my soul. I was going through documents, checking property records, tracing signatures, making sure every single thing I worked for was back where it belonged. That's when I saw it. My house. Not the house Patrick and Janelle lived in. Not the rental properties I invested in years ago. My house. The one I built from the ground up with my sweat and sacrifice. The house that carried every memory of my life as a wife and mother. Franklin had already put it up for sale. I sat at the table staring at that paperwork, my hands shaking, my chest burning like fire. He didn't even wait. He didn't even give me the dignity of dying first before moving on me. He was so sure that poison would finish me off that he started moving weeks ahead, signing papers, meeting with buyers, plotting to cash out my home like it was nothing but another transaction. Do you know what it feels like to realize the man you laid beside for decades, the man you built your life with, already erased you before you were even gone? It's like being buried alive while you're still breathing. That's how it hit me. And it wasn't sloppy work either. Franklin had done it quiet, neat, like he was tying up loose ends. He'd moved money around, called in favors, lined up people to take what was mine the minute I was out the picture. He thought he was covering every track. What he didn't plan for was me still being alive to see it. That discovery broke something in me, but it also built something new. See, before that moment, a small part of me still wondered if I could forgive. Not forget, not trust again, but forgive. For Patrick's sake. For family's sake. But when I saw my name pushed off my own deed, when I realized Franklin had already signed my life away like I was dead and gone, that was the point of no return. I thought about every night I stayed up balancing books while he slept. Every morning I woke up early to get the kids fed, houses cleaned, bills paid. Every time I covered for him when he came up short. Every sacrifice I made so his name could stand tall in the community. And now, he was selling the very roof over my head like it was scrap metal. That wasn't just betrayal. That was erasure. That was him trying to wipe me out completely. Not just my life but my legacy. And I swore on Jania's name, I wasn't going to let that happen. I called my lawyer the same night. My voice didn't shake, my tone didn't crack. I told him exactly what I found and told him I wanted it stopped. Immediately. Papers were pulled. Sales were blocked. And where Franklin's signature had tried to erase me, mine went right back in bold. But it wasn't just about reversing the sale. It was about the message. Franklin needed to know that every scheme, every lie, every secret move he thought he could make, I was 2 steps ahead now. He thought he was the hunter, but he was already caught in my trap. That discovery lit a fire in me no betrayal had ever lit before. I wasn't just taking back what was mine. I was making sure Franklin, Patrick, and Janelle understood one thing clear. Lorraine Carter wasn't going to be erased. Not from my house. Not from my family. Not from this earth. Forgiveness died the moment I saw that paperwork. From then on, all that lived in me was resolve. And the kind of resolve I carried. Don't break. It don't bend. It only builds until the day you strike back. I thought the paperwork was the lowest Franklin could go. Selling my house out from under me while I was still alive felt like a punch straight through my chest. But betrayal got layers, and I was about to peel back one so dirty it made every other wound feel small. Because Franklin Carter didn't just betray me with lies and money. He betrayed me with flesh. Came to me slow, little hints at first. The way Janelle lingered too long when Franklin spoke. The way Franklin looked at her, not like a father-in-law, not like family, but like a man looking at something he claimed as his. I used to brush it off, tell myself I was imagining it. But the truth don't stay buried forever. And when I finally saw it for what it was, I almost lost the breath in my lungs. Franklin was sleeping with my daughter-in-law. The same woman I welcomed into this family. The same woman who stood in my kitchen and poured me a drink filled with poison. The two of them were bound together in ways that turned my stomach. And Patrick, my son, had no idea he was being played like a fool in his own house. That's when the whole plan snapped into focus. It wasn't just about getting rid of me. No, Franklin and Janelle were thinking bigger. They wanted it all. And Patrick, he was just a temporary pawn. Because once I was gone, once the money and properties shifted, Franklin and Janelle had another step lined up. They were going to take Patrick out next. You hear me? My husband and my daughter-in-law weren't just planning to erase me. They were planning to erase my son too. Also, they could be free to start over with stolen wealth, living some twisted fantasy together. The rage that boiled up in me that day is something I can't even put into words. Betrayal by a husband is one thing. Betrayal by your son is another. But betrayal that ties those two together with a woman who had no business touching either one of them. That's a sickness. That's a level of evil that shakes your soul. I pictured Franklin whispering to Janelle in the same voice he used to whisper to me when we were young. I pictured her smiling back at him, thinking she had secured her future by laying with a man old enough to be her father-in-law. And the worst part, they were plotting all this under my roof at my table, smiling in my face like I couldn't smell the stench of their betrayal. But let me be clear, I didn't crumble when I found out. I didn't scream, didn't confront them with fire in my voice. Well, I went colder. Because by then, I understood exactly what I was dealing with. Franklin and Janelle weren't just greedy. They were dangerous. And Patrick, he was in too deep to see the knife aimed at his own back. So I held my silence like a blade. I let them keep thinking I was blind, that I was still grieving, that I had no idea what was happening around me. But inside, every breath I took was steadying me for what was coming. If they thought they could take me out, if they thought they could use my son's life like a bargaining chip, they had another thing coming. The truth about that affair didn't just disgust me. It clarified everything. It showed me that Franklin had no limit. There was no bottom to how low he would sink. And Janelle, she wasn't just a greedy wife anymore. She was a snake in my garden, wrapped around my husband, waiting to strike again. The plan to kill Patrick, to wipe him off the board after me, lit a fire in my chest that nothing could put out. Because if there's one thing you don't do, you don't come for a mother's child. They already took Jania. They thought they could take Patrick too. And in that moment my vow shifted. I wasn't just reclaiming what was mine anymore. I was making sure their hands never touched another thing I loved again. The truth got a way of clawing its way out no matter how hard people try to bury it. Lies might hold for a season, but sooner or later, somebody cracks. And in our case, it was Janelle. The same woman who smiled while slipping poison in my glass. The same woman who thought she could play wife to my son and lover to my husband. She was the one who broke under pressure. And when she did, every rotten secret came spilling out. Didn't happen right away. At first, Janelle tried to act strong, holding herself together like she had it all under control. She played the grieving mother-in-law role, crying at the right times, keeping her head down when questions came. But guilt is heavy and fear is heavier. And both of them started weighing on her until she couldn't carry it anymore. The police had questions after Jania's death. A child gone like that. You can't hide behind excuses forever. They wanted to know what was in her system, what caused it. Tests don't lie. And when the results came back showing poison, the heat turned all the way up. I watched Janelle's mask start to slip. The sobs weren't as controlled anymore. Her hands shook when she tried to hold her coffee. She avoided looking me in the eye, because she knew I saw her truth long before the rest of the world caught on. And when the detectives pressed her, she crumbled like dust. Tears spilled down her face as she tried to explain, but every word only made it worse. She admitted it all. How Franklin had come to her first, whispering promises of a future, telling her she deserved more than just being Patrick's wife. How he fed her greed, told her if they got rid of me, the money, the properties, the life she wanted would finally be hers. She laid it all bare, the Thanksgiving plan, the poison, the waiting game. She admitted she poured the drink with her own hand, smiling in my face while knowing she was serving death. She confessed to the affair, to laying with Franklin behind closed doors while my son worked and trusted her. And then she told the darkest part. The plan didn't stop with me. Once I was gone and the assets shifted, Franklin and her were going to take Patrick out too. Kill him, erase him, so the two of them could start over somewhere else with everything my family had built. Every dark corner of that house lit up with her words. There was no more hiding, no more pretending. Janelle's confession turned what I suspected into solid truth. And let me tell you, it hit harder than any poison ever could. Because hearing it out loud, hearing her detail how carefully they plotted, how casually they thought of me and my son as obstacles to remove, it burned me to my core. But there was something else in her breakdown. Regret. Not regret for what she did, no. Regret that it went wrong. Regret that Jania drank the glass instead of me. Regret that the whole thing fell apart and dragged her down with it. That's the kind of woman Janelle was. She wasn't sorry. She was just sorry she got caught. When the confession was done, there was no denying it. Franklin's mask had slipped long ago, but now the world had the proof. Patrick had to face the truth about the wife he trusted, the father he followed, and the role he played in letting them get this far. And me. I sat there listening, silent but steady, knowing this was just another step in the destruction of everything they tried to build on lies. The confession didn't bring Jania back. It didn't heal the hole in my chest. But it shined a light so bright that none of them could crawl back into the shadows. Every secret they tried to keep was out in the open now. And once the truth is exposed, there's no putting it back. That was the moment everything turned. Because now it wasn't just suspicion. It wasn't just whispers overheard in the garage. It was confession. Cold. Detailed. Final. And with that, there was no going back. Take a breath and stay with me because this part is heavy. When the truth finally stood up in that room, no makeup, no perfume, just bare and ugly, Patrick fell apart from the inside out. It didn't happen loud. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow, quiet, and steady, like a house settling right before it caves. He was my baby once. I knew the sound of him breaking even when he didn't make a sound. After Janelle's confession, the air in that home changed. You could taste the iron of it, the shame, the fear, the grief all mixed together until the walls felt damp. Patrick started moving like a ghost. Shoulders bent, eyes down, hands rubbing together like he was trying to wash off something he couldn't see. He kept close to the hallway where Jania's laughter used to bounce. That's where it cut deepest. Every step he took reminded him of who really paid the price. He couldn't outrun the facts. Betrayed by the man he called father. Betrayed by the woman he called wife. Used like a tool to edge me out of my own life, then scheduled to be erased right after me. He had signed up for greed. He ended up holding death. Clung to him. He sat on the edge of the couch at odd hours, staring at nothing, lips moving like he was arguing with a version of himself he couldn't win against. Food went cold in front of him. Sleep slid off him like rain. Guilt was eating and it ate everything. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw it in his face. I didn't remind him of the garage or the glass or the way his eyes tracked me across the table waiting for me to drop. There are places a mother's voice can't reach once a son has walked himself into that dark. All I could do was stand close enough for him to feel I was still there and far enough to let the truth do what truth does: burn. He tried to make himself useful around the house, small things that meant nothing. Straightening a stack of mail, lining up shoes by the door, folding a blanket that never stayed folded. That's how shame looks in a grown man. Little rituals to convince himself order can still be made. But order couldn't live there anymore. Not after confessions. Not after poison. Not after a child's room went silent. He wouldn't look at Franklin for long. Every time their eyes met, Patrick's face twitched like someone had slapped him. He saw it now, what I had seen for years. Franklin didn't love anything he couldn't use. And when Janelle tried to touch his shoulder, Patrick flinched like her hand was fire. That was the triangle finally collapsing. The husband, the father, the wife. 3 corners built on lies snapping in on themselves. When the confession became paperwork and the paperwork became official, quiet turned into noise. The kind of noise that makes a man's chest feel like it's being crushed. Questions. Terms he wasn't ready to hear thrown around by people who don't blink when they say them. The truth wasn't just a house secret anymore. It lived outside where it can't be cleaned, can't be charmed, can't be put back. Patrick started pacing at night, back and forth on the same strip of floor until it shined. He'd stop at Jania's door, lean his forehead against it, then move on like the wood itself had told him to keep going. He held one of her little sweaters once, pressed it to his face and stood there so long the sun changed windows. I don't know what word sits between grief and disgust when a man recognizes himself in the wrong story, but that's the word that wore him. I want you to understand something plain. I didn't wish this on him. I didn't celebrate it. There is no victory in watching your child drown in water he helped pour. There is only silence and the steady pull of what must be done next. I had already started taking back what was mine. I had already shut the doors they thought would never close. But I left one door open in my heart for Patrick to walk back through if he found the strength to stand. He tried. Lord knows he tried. But strength can't grow on soil poisoned by your own choices. The day it happened, the house was too still. No TV, no footsteps, no clatter of a cup set down wrong. Just that heavy stillness you feel right before a storm breaks a window. A call came in, from a voice doing a job nobody wants, saying words nobody's ready to carry. They didn't use details. They didn't need to. Understood. Patrick had decided he couldn't stand under what he knew anymore. He put an ending where there should have been an apology, a surrender, a slow rebuilding. I sat down on the nearest chair and let the weight land. Not a scream. Not a collapse. Just that long exhale that empties a mother and leaves her sitting inside the truth with both hands open. My grandbaby gone because of a glass meant for me. My son gone because he let greed guide him to a cliff and believed that was the only road left. And still, Franklin stood like a man waiting for a bus, angry at the schedule, never at himself. Understand this and carry it with you. Shame is a room with no windows when you lock yourself in it. Patrick didn't have to stay there. He chose to. And though I can name all the reasons why he walked in, I can't walk him back out. That's the part of this story that will always ache when the house is quiet. I'm not telling you this for shock. I'm telling you because this is the cost. This is what greed does when it sits at a family table and gets served like a side dish. It devours. It erases. It leaves chairs empty and names spoken in past tense. And while that chair went empty, the man who set the table kept breathing. Franklin still had to face what came next. He had to stand under the same light Janelle tried to dodge and watch everything he built on lies turn to dust in his hands. Stay close. His fall wasn't thunder. It was slower, meaner, and it left him with nothing but the echo of his own schemes. When I tell you Franklin Carter was a man stripped bare, believe me, I don't say it with joy. I say it with the weight of truth. Old, bitter, and exposed. He had nothing left by the time it was all said and done. No son, no loyal partner, no wealth, no family. The man who once thought he could bury me was left standing in the dirt of his own making, humiliated and forgotten. The fall didn't come quick like a crash. It came slow, like rot creeping through wood until the beams snap. First, Patrick was gone, swallowed by his own shame. That left Franklin standing in a house that no longer echoed with his son's voice. Then Janelle, the woman he thought would carry him into some twisted future, turned into his biggest liability. Her confession poured gasoline on the fire, exposing every plan, every lie, every dirty touch between them. She wasn't his partner anymore. She was his witness stand. I watched him unravel piece by piece. The same man who once puffed his chest and barked orders now moved like a shadow in his own home. He couldn't walk down a street without whispers trailing behind him. Couldn't sit in a room without eyes narrowing, wondering how a man could conspire against his own wife, sleep with his own daughter-in-law, and plot the death of his own son. The respect he used to chase was gone. Financially, he was wrecked. I had taken back the businesses, the properties, the accounts. He had no safety net, no nest egg to crawl onto. All that plotting, all that scheming, and the man was left with lint in his pockets. Every signature he had tried to forge, every sale he lined up behind my back, it all collapsed. He wasn't just broke. He was powerless. And power, that was what Franklin lived on. More than money, more than family, he fed on control. But once it slipped, once the truth stood tall, he couldn't fake it anymore. I remember watching him sit in that empty living room, hunched over, muttering to himself, trying to piece together how it all flipped. He never blamed himself. No, Franklin Carter was too proud for that. He pointed at everybody else. Janelle for cracking, Patrick for being weak, even me for surviving what was meant to kill me. But deep down, whether he admitted it or not, he knew. His empire of lies collapsed at his own feet, because he built it on sand. You want to know what humiliation looks like on a man like Franklin? It looks like silence where there used to be arrogance. It looks like him staring at the walls of a house that wasn't his anymore. It looks like people crossing the street when they see him coming, not because they fear him, but because they can't stomach him. He wasn't the man he thought he was. He was just an old fool who let greed eat him alive. By then, even his body started to show the wear. Shoulders slumped, skin sagged, eyes hollow. He carried bitterness like a sickness, and it ate through him daily. He thought Janelle would stand beside him, but she had already turned. He thought Patrick would rise with him, but Patrick was gone. And me. The woman he tried to erase was still standing, stronger than he could ever imagine. There's a saying that the higher a man climbs on lies, the harder the fall when truth comes knocking. Franklin climbed high, building ladders out of betrayal and greed. And when it all came crashing down, nobody was there to catch him. Not a friend, not a partner, not even a son. I didn't have to lift a hand against him. I didn't have to poison him back or raise a voice. I just stood still and let the truth do its work. And the truth stripped Franklin of everything. By the time the dust settled, Franklin Carter wasn't a mastermind, wasn't a provider, wasn't a respected man. He was a bitter old husband left to choke on the ashes of his own schemes. That was his fall. Not loud. Not glorious. just slow, cold, and unforgettable. By the time it was all over, there wasn't nothing left to scream about. No more arguments. No more fights in the shadows. No more pointing fingers or dodging lies. The storm had passed, and what it left behind was silence. Heavy silence that only truth can bring. I sit here now not with rage, not with tears, but with calm. Because the truth is, I didn't have to destroy Franklin, Patrick, or Janelle. They destroyed themselves. Every lie they told, every scheme they set in motion, every line they crossed. It wasn't me that brought them down. It was them. They dug their own graves with greed, betrayal, and shame. All I did was survive long enough to watch the dirt cover them. People ask how I kept standing. How I didn't break after losing Jania, after finding out my own husband was plotting my death, after realizing my son was standing against me, after hearing my daughter-in-law confess to laying with the same man who raised him. I'll tell you how. I remembered who I was. I remembered what I built. And I remembered that nothing they could take from me would ever change the fact that I was the one who gave it to them in the first place. The house they slept in. The businesses they enjoyed. The life they thought was guaranteed. Built on my back. So when I stripped it all away, I wasn't being cruel. I was just taking back what was mine. That's not revenge. That's survival. And survival don't come pretty. It don't come with clean hands or soft hearts. It comes with scars, with silence, with steady eyes that see betrayal for what it is and move through it anyway. I had to learn that the hard way. I had to stand in a room with my granddaughter's body and make a choice. Was I going to let their evil bury me too, or was I going to rise above it? Chose to rise. Franklin ended as an old, bitter man, stripped of the respect he chased his whole life. Patrick ended swallowed by guilt, too heavy for him to carry. Janelle ended exposed, her greed spilling out until she had no dignity left. They wanted me gone, but I'm still here, breathing, speaking, standing. That's not luck, that's resolve. And let me leave you with this. Betrayal don't always come from strangers. It don't always wear the face of an enemy. Sometimes it's the man lying next to you, whispering promises while he's plotting your end. Sometimes it's the son you raised, letting somebody poison his mind against his own mother. Sometimes it's the woman you welcomed into your home, smiling in your face while she's sharpening her knife. That's the haunting reality of family. But if you take nothing else from my story, take this. Don't let betrayal make you forget your worth. Don't let it strip you of what you built. Stand firm. Take back what's yours. And remember, sometimes you don't have to lift a finger to watch your enemies fall. Just stand still, hold on, and let the truth do what truth does. I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I survived. And survival, my friend, is the loudest revenge of all.